One of the biggest misconceptions about forgiveness is that it always means reconciliation. Last time we talked about what active forgiveness looks like. But sometimes forgiveness does not lead to reconciliation. Today we're looking about a time two epic apostles duked it out, and it led to them splitting up forever. Be sure to stick around until the end, because the final point may change your perspective on forgiveness and show you what has been holding you back from letting go. So there was once this great speaker for the Lord named Barnabas. One day, he introduced this guy named Paul to the early church. You know, the same guy who would go on to write half the New Testament. These two spent years preaching and traveling together. They were the best team out there, the Lennon-McCartney of the early church. But one day, an argument started, and like so many arguments, it forever destroyed what was once a wonderful friendship. Paul and Barnabas had just completed their roughly 2-year-long first missionary trip, and they were gearing up for the second. Barnabas had a cousin named John Mark. This guy later wrote the Gospel of Mark. But there's a problem here. Mark abandoned Paul and Barnabas during their first missionary trip. The reasons are not given, but they don't really matter here. There is no indication Paul hated Mark for leaving, but here's the point. Forgiveness means letting go, but not letting things slide. So Barnabas is like, hey bro, Mark's family, so he's coming. And Paul was like, no man, I'm sorry. He can't come. He forgave Mark, but he also knew he couldn't trust him to bring him on this second missionary trip. Then things got ugly. We don't know exactly what was said, but the Bible says it was a sharp disagreement. This was not a polite, let's just agree to disagree and go our separate ways. No, it was angry. It was loud. Paul and Barnabas were great leaders to the early church, but they were also human. They made mistakes. So after all this arguing, you know what happened? Barnabas stuck with his cousin Mark and sailed away, while Paul and his friend Silas sailed off in a different direction. Before this, Paul and Barnabas were inseparable. After this, Barnabas is never mentioned in the Bible again. See, Paul never wrote about this incident in his letters. In other words, this means he never spoke negatively about his friend. This is the opposite of what we usually see today. Friendships break, relationships fall apart, and the first thing we do is slam the other person publicly. We write about all the horrible things they said and did. We destroy them through words, texts, and tweets. Not Paul. He left it to the Lord and moved on. He forgave Barnabas and Mark. He still loved them. I seriously doubt, as Barnabas and Mark sailed away, Paul screamed out, I hope your mission trip fails miserably after what you've done to me. Instead, he probably prayed that their trip would be a success too. Someone may have done something to you that you think it's impossible to forgive them for. But what you really mean is that it's impossible to just pretend it never happened and keep on keeping on with them in your life. Forgiveness, it's about letting go. It doesn't mean what the other person did is right or that you should just accept it. It means you don't hold bitterness and you let God deal with the other person as he seems fit. That old saying, let go and let God, sounds cheesier than a block of cheddar, but it does have some truth, and that's what Paul did here. Well, I hope today's story about the epic fight between two apostles helped you in some way. Until next time, God bless you, everyone. Today we are looking at the day that the... no. Let's agree to disagree to... No. We don't like to think... We don't like to think about some great... No.